Hello guys, today I'll be reviewing Spiritual Healing by Death, and this album is often regarded as one of their weaker albums, but for me, this album moves a lot in terms of where I'd rank it within their albums. Sometimes it's closer to the bottom, but sometimes it's closer to the middle. It's rarely at the top, but I'd say most of the time it's closer to the middle, but my ranking of the Death albums honestly changes a lot, especially with, again, the placement of this album, but this album also, you can tell that they're starting to move towards that tech death sound, and they go right into it with the next album and the ones after that. But you can maybe make the argument that this album's kind of a transitional album in a way, transitioning into something a bit different from from what you heard from the previous albums, Leprosy and Scream Bloody Gore. But yeah, this album I think is a pretty interesting album in their discography, so let's go ahead and dive into it. The album starts off with Living Monstrosity, and the song is basically about a baby being born addicted to some kind of drug, whether it be cocaine or some other drug, and basically being born having some sort of deformation and stuff like that, themes like that. And overall, I like this song. It has a nice main riff, and you have your moments of speed, and you also have your moments that are more mid-tempo, and overall it's actually one of my personal favorites on the album. But then we get to the song Altering the Future, and what stands out the most to me in this song is the rhythm work and the tempo changes. When you listen to a song like this one, for example, you can tell that they're eventually going to move on to the more technical side of death metal, and this is another favorite of mine on the album, but it's also not a song that I think to go back to very often, which is odd because this is a song that I definitely return to more if I just, remember. But yeah, this song overall, again, one of my favorites on the album. But then we get to Defensive Personalities, and you get some decent riffs throughout the song, but it's always been one of my least favorites on the album. It's a good song, but it never really grabbed me as much as other songs on the album for me personally. But then we get to the song Within the Mind, and right off the bat, the guitar work definitely stands out the most to me. But also the solo at the end is just straight up excellent. We can maybe make the argument that the solo is kind of underrated too. I mean, maybe not the best solo in the world. Certainly wouldn't go that far, but for what it is, I think it's a pretty excellent solo and kind of an underrated solo too. But also, I think the tempo changes and rhythm work are also pretty impressive in this song too. And I think it's another more notable song on the album. But then we get to the title track, Spiritual Healing, and this is the longest song on the album. And this song basically deals with the false promises of religion, or basically using religion as an excuse to commit something cruel, whether it be a crime or using religion as an excuse to get someone to do something for you, something not good. But yeah, this song for me, another favorite of mine on the album. You have your more mid-tempo moments, but you also have your more faster moments, and overall I think it's a pretty solid song. You can maybe make the argument that it's kind of underrated. Not the most underrated song on the album, but again, you can maybe say that it's kind of underrated, but overall, again, one of my favorites on the album. But then we get to the song Low Life, and this is another song on the album for me where I think the guitar definitely takes the spotlight. There are some riffs in the song that are maybe some of my favorite riffs on the album, maybe, but Low Life really shows how impressive Death can be with their guitar work. And the guitar work, again, just really pulls you into this song, and I think the song is really a blast to listen to. But then we get to the song Genetic Reconstruction, another least favorite of mine on the album. You get some decent speed work in this song with the rhythm work, but the song overall doesn't do much for me. It's not a bad song, I do like it, but it never really grabbed me as much as other songs on the album. But then the album closes with Killing Spree, and I really like the rhythm work in this song. You get some nice speed with the tempo work / rhythm work in the song, and This is maybe another favorite of mine on the album. I don't know. I think the song is really underrated. Definitely underrated within their album closers too. I really like this song. When looking at what people are talking about with Death, I don't see this song talked about very often. And again, I think it's kind of underrated. Maybe not the best song on the album, but overall, I do really like it though, and I think it's a pretty solid album closer. But anyways, if I had to rate this album, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. Honestly, with the Death albums, I wouldn't give any Death album lower than an 8. Maybe a 7.5, maybe, but probably not. I'd probably put 8 at the lowest, maybe. But Spiritual Healing, not one of my personal favorite Death albums, but I like all their albums, so even if the album is at the bottom of my Death ranking, I still think it's a pretty solid album overall. An 8 out of 10 is not a bad score. But yeah, overall, this album does have its share of notable tracks. Maybe the album is not as memorable as some of their other albums, like Individual Thought Patterns or Symbolic or Leprosy, but this album, again, I think is pretty good. And if you haven't listened to it in a while, definitely give it another listen. Or if you didn't like it at first, definitely give it another chance. But anyways, let me know your thoughts on the album. Do you love it? Do you hate it? How do you like it compared to their other albums? And also the artwork. I do think that the art does kind of feel like of its time. Definitely very 80s looking, or late 80s, early 90s, that kind of time. So you can maybe say that the artwork looks maybe a little bit dated, but overall I still do like it though. Not my favorite album artwork from Death, but I do think it's kind of interesting though. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and a like, subscribe. Have a nice day and take care.